standing up for people, standing up for citizens is never wrong. It's how it should be. And for me, there was no question. This was the party for me. When you have a government that wants to take those rights and freedoms and now call them privileges, I have a problem with that.
For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini, and I'm here in Hastings, Ontario, which is a small rural community, about a half an hour southeast of Peterborough. So we're in the riding of Northumberland-Peterborough-South. I am with the New Blue candidate, Joshua Chalhoub, again here in Northumberland-Peterborough-South, and we are going to discuss what it's looked like following the campaign trail as a New Blue quote-unquote fringe party candidate, as the mainstream media completely ignores anyone who is part of those fringe parties, despite the fact that collectively the others are polling higher than the widely recognized Green Party in the provincial election that's set to take place on June 2nd, in hopes of replacing the Progressive Conservatives, with the leader of that being our Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford. So Joshua, I guess first and foremost, tell me a little bit about who you are and why you decided to run with New Blue.
Well, I've been a resident of Ontario for over 35 years. And up until recently, I've been politically engaged, but more on a personal level and not so much officially, if you will. After seeing what's been going on in the country and the province and the state of our politics, I've decided that, if you want change, you have to affect that change personally and put yourself out there and try to unite and find ways that better serve citizens, serve the population, serve your riding, as opposed to the expectation of government doing it for us, because I think they're failing at that.
And I think Ontarians, at least what I see and me personally, feel entirely disregarded by the representatives that we have previously elected to speak on behalf of their constituents. We've seen unprecedented civil liberties infringements, restrictions and mandates, and things that aren't typical coming from a conservative government. What was it about the New Blues platform that you aligned with?
I think for me, New Blue Ontario, their blueprint, their platform, their principles truly resonated with me. I think that some of the issues that we're tackling, whether it's accountability, government accountability, whether it is the pushing of free press, the nonpartisan issues surrounding political governments in terms of how they doled out their budgets to different organizations, different communities. I think, in particular, Northumberland-Peterborough-South is being left behind as a riding in whole, and I really want to be able to affect some positive change in that regard. And so for me, New Blue Ontario was a good fit, and I believe that the principles that we stand for are principles that are important in this election. And standing up for people, standing up for citizens is never wrong. It's how it should be. And for me, there was no question. This was the party for me. And this was the time for me to run. And so I'm proud to be their candidate, and I'm looking forward to the next couple of weeks continue to campaign. I think one of the issues right now that I'm passionate about is healthcare, and how New Blue Ontario approaches that. While we know during the COVID, the past couple of years with COVID and the pandemic, there were way too many nurses, too many frontline healthcare workers that were fired from their jobs because they chose to make a medical decision for themselves. That's something for me that is extremely important. Medical autonomy is important, and having government interference and a government telling you no longer have the right to choose is absurd to me. It's not just a matter of health and safety. It's a matter of your rights and freedoms, your civil liberties. These are ingrained. They're fundamentally important. And when we start to overstep and we have a government that wants to overreach and dismantle those rights, when you have a government that wants to take those those rights and freedoms and now call them privileges, I have a problem with that. These are not privileges. This is Canada. This is Ontario, and every single individual has a right to have their own decisions respected, especially when it comes to medical vaccines, if you will.
Body sovereignty is definitely a hot topic in Ontario and Canada as a whole, and probably arguably North America as well. I want to go back a little bit when you mentioned freedom of the press, because you've been receiving some rigmarole with quote unquote mainstream media in terms of trying to get your campaign out there in the media. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've been faced with there?
Personally speaking, there have been a number of debates and forums that have taken place, of which I have not been invited to. What I find really interesting is that many of these organizations, and I'll name a couple just in passing, the Port Hope Chamber of Commerce. There was a debate that actually took place last night with Your TV, a regional cable station, where they called it an all candidates debate. So I have an issue with that, because it's not really an all candidates debate when you leave out, a number of registered candidates that are running in this election. And to make it even worse is that New Blue Ontario has 124 candidates running across this province. We have a full slate of candidates. We were one of the first parties to have 124 candidates, and to leave us out of debates it's questionable.
Well, and we saw that, of course, with the leadership debates that just took place on Monday night, hosted by TV Ontario, TVO, where Jim Karahalios was also excluded from that debate on these fine print technicalities. Now, you also were trying to get some flyers distributed in local print media. Tell us what happened there.
I had reached out to Post Media. There are a number of regional local papers that are delivered to residents throughout the riding, and I thought it would be a wonderful way to reach out to constituents and spread the word, spread the message, have residents learn more about New Blue Ontario by having these regional papers distribute my flyers in their papers weekly. So I reached out to Post Media. I had a conversation with a rep. We went through the process of what was required. And as far as I know, we had a phone conversation, and I was told that the artwork for my flyer was approved. There was an issue of including a line at the top that signified it was a paid political flyer, which of course I had no problem with having done, and I was ready to make that change to the artwork. When I did not hear back from the rep over a number of days, I reached out to them again to find out what the status was. And then I was unceremoniously told from an individual by the name of Joe Southwell, sent me an email stating that the committee had looked at the flyer, and unfortunately that flyer was not approved, and as such would not be distributed in their papers. When I reached out back to him, I asked him for a reason why the flyer was not approved. And of course, I received the typical answer, which was no answer. I reached out again on Twitter. I reached out on social media, and no one reached out back to give me a reasonable, plausible explanation as to why my flyer was not approved. And it's a flyer that many candidates within Ontario ridings are distributing as well. So it's not just a specific one to this particular riding. It's been endorsed by the party, and there's nothing in that flyer that could be construed as anything other than educating the public about what we stand for and the party principles.
I understand there's one other organization that you've since reached out to try to gain access to a formal registered debate. Just in closing, what does that campaign trail look like for you now moving forward? We are quickly approaching that June 2nd deadline.
The campaign trail as it stands right now, and how I'm going to be moving forward, I'm reaching out to different organizations to hopefully get an opportunity to be part of these forums, part of these debates. I think it's important that all residents have an opportunity to see and hear from every candidate, regardless of political or partisan feelings. I think it's important and it should be really their duty. It should be the press's duty and the media's duty to make sure that every candidate has a fair chance to spread and communicate their hopes and wishes and vision with their constituents in their particular ridings. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on for the next couple of weeks. I'm going to be out there door knocking, canvassing in different ridings, talking to constituents, and at this point we've received wonderful support. There's a lot of people in this province that are truly ready for change, and I think New Blue Ontario is that change, and the time has come.
Unlike the mainstream media, Rebel News doesn't take a penny from the government, which means that we are 100% viewer funded. If you like the coverage that Lincoln and I brought to you on the leaders' debate, then please continue to support our coverage by donating at realreporters.ca. There, you can also see all of our politically relevant reports to stay up to date. That's realreporters.ca.